A 10-year-old Filipino kid walked on stage and delivered a voice no one expected. The massive doors leading to the America's Got Talent stage swung open slowly, revealing a tiny silhouette standing in the bright glow behind them. It was a 10-year-old Filipino boy no taller than the judge's desk, taking his first cautious steps forward. His small shoes tapped gently on the polished stage floor as he approached the center, his eyes drawn upward to the towering LED screens, shining lights and thousands of expectant faces staring back at him. He clutched the microphone tightly, so tightly his knuckles were turning white. Even from the audience, people could see his hands trembling. He swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising wave of nerves in his chest. He had dreamed of this moment since he was old enough to sing along to the radio, but now that he was standing here, on the world's biggest stage, the reality felt almost unreal. The judges looked at him with a soft curiosity. Heidi Klum leaned forward slightly, her warm smile reassuring. Sofia Vergara gave him a gentle nod, sensing his nerves. Howie Mandel waited patiently, hands folded neatly in front of him. But the boy's eyes eventually settled on Simon Cowell, the judge he admired and feared the most. Simon lifted an eyebrow, intrigued by the child's timid posture. "Hello there," he said in his deep British tone. "What's your name?" The boy's voice wavered as he responded. "My name is Rafael. I'm from the Philippines." A soft wave of cheers rose from the audience. Filipino Americans proudly waving small flags, others clapping to encourage him. Simon nodded slowly. "And Rafael, how old are you?" 10, he said, his voice cracking slightly. 10, Simon repeated, leaning closer. "Very young. And what will you be doing for us today?" Rafael took a tiny breath and answered, "I will sing opera." A ripple of surprise swept through the auditorium. Opera? From a 10-year-old? Even the judges exchanged looks. Heidi's eyebrows lifted. Howie blinked in shock. Sophia's mouth opened slightly, as if she had misunderstood him. Simon narrowed his eyes, not in doubt but in deep curiosity. Opera was one of the most difficult genres in the world, and grown adults struggled with it. Seeing a child attempt it was rare, seeing a child succeed was nearly impossible. But Raphael stood there, staring at Simon with a mixture of fear and determination. He wanted to prove something, not just to the judges, not even to America, but to himself. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "Always sing with your heart, Anak, not with fear." Simon nodded. "All right then, good luck." Raphael breathed out shakily, the stage lights dimmed slightly, and the opening chords of his chosen piece, an iconic opera aria, began to play. He closed his eyes, his shoulders rose and fell. For a moment, he looked like any frightened child standing in front of a crowd far too big. But then, he opened his mouth, and the first note that came out was nothing short of a revelation. Clear, powerful, ringingly pure. It was the kind of note that instantly grabbed every soul in the room. A wave of stunned silence fell across the auditorium. People's eyes widened, mouths dropped open. A few whispered, "Oh my God," under their breath. Simon froze, his jaw stiffening as he leaned even closer, trying to process the sound coming from this tiny boy. His skepticism evaporated instantly. This wasn't cute. This wasn't good for his age. This was extraordinary. Raphael held the note perfectly, steady, controlled, and filled with emotion well beyond his 10 years. The tone was round and rich, the vibrato smooth and natural. He didn't sound like a child trying to mimic opera. He sounded like someone born for it. He lifted his head slightly, eyes still closed, as if he were channeling something deep within. The stage lights created a soft halo around him, making him appear even smaller, but somehow larger at the same time. As he transitioned into the next phrase, the audience collectively leaned forward. His voice climbed effortlessly from one register to the next, shaping each word with precision and grace. At certain moments, the power of his voice seemed almost impossible. How could something so big come from someone so small? The cameras cut to the judges. Heidi's mouth was open, her eyes sparkling in disbelief. Sophia had her hand over her heart, tears already forming. Howie was nodding rhythmically, impressed beyond words, and Simon Cowell was staring intently, his expression frozen in complete astonishment. He wasn't smiling, not yet, but he had that familiar look he got whenever he discovered an unbelievable talent. The look that said, "I didn't expect this," And I can't believe what I'm hearing." Raphael's voice swelled with emotion as he moved into the climax of the piece. His arms rose instinctively, guiding the music as if conducting an invisible orchestra. His face shifted with passion, each note radiating from deep inside him. By now, the audience was transfixed. Not a sound, not a whisper, not a movement. The theater felt like it was holding its breath. When Raphael reached the final phrase of the aria, he stood tall, took a deep breath, and released one last soaring note. Long, resonant, and impossibly powerful. It echoed across the room, filling the space like a burst of golden light. And in that moment, a star was born. The final note of Raphael's opening phrase was still lingering in the air when the audience erupted into applause. Sudden, explosive, and impossible to hold back. But before the clapping could fully settle, the music swelled again, guiding Raphael into the next, more demanding section of the aria. He blinked once, steadying himself. For a brief moment, it almost looked as if he wasn't sure whether he had really impressed them, whether the applause was truly meant for him. But when he saw the standing ovation beginning in the back rows and the stunned faces in the front, something inside him shifted. His nervousness began to fall away like loose feathers shaken off a bird preparing to soar. This was his moment now, and he wasn't going to let fear steal it from him. The orchestra rose behind him, strings lifting the melody with energy that pulsed like a beating heart. Raphael stepped slightly forward, eyes brightening, and reconnected with the music. From the balcony to the floor seats to the wings backstage, everyone watched as he prepared to bring his performance to an even higher level. Then, he released the next note. It was stronger, fuller, more confident, like a young warrior discovering the strength of his own voice. The sound traveled across the theater with such clarity that some audience members instinctively placed a hand over their chest, feeling the vibrations inside themselves. A woman in the front row gasped out loud. A man near the back whispered to his partner, "This can't be real. He's 10? Backstage, crew members who had been carrying equipment stopped in their tracks. One technician, still holding a coil of cables around his shoulder, stood frozen, staring at the live feed on a nearby monitor. Another crew member set down his coffee cup slowly, never taking his eyes off the screen. "This kid," he murmured. "On stage," Raphael continued, moving through each operatic passage with precision and grace. He didn't just sing, he connected. Every rise in volume, every shift in tone, every swelling crescendo carried emotion. Pure, honest, unfiltered emotion. His voice was like a wave rolling through the room, sometimes gentle and delicate, sometimes massive and powerful. Yet no matter how high or low he went, he never lost control. The cameras captured the judges' reactions perfectly. Heidi Klum. She had her hands clasped to her chest, eyes watery with awe. Her expression was almost maternal, pride mixed with disbelief. She mouthed silently, "He's incredible. Sofia Vergara." Sofia looked emotionally overwhelmed. She kept shaking her head slowly, as if trying to process what she was witnessing. At one point, she wiped the corner of her eye, trying not to smudge her makeup on live TV. A soft whisper escaped her lips. "Dios mío, Howie Mandel." Howie leaned so far forward that he nearly stood up from his seat. He pointed toward the stage, looking at Simon as if to say, "Do you see this? Do you hear this?" His face was glowing with excitement. This was the kind of performance he lived for. Simon Cowell. But the most powerful reaction came from Simon. For a long moment he didn't blie. NK. His eyes were locked on Raphael with laser focus. The skepticism he had at the start was gone. In its place was something else: respect, admiration, and the dawning realization that he was witnessing a rare, once-in-a-generation talent. Simon slowly lowered his hand from his chin, his jaw tightened, his lips parted ever so slightly. He wasn't smiling yet, but the expression on his face said everything. This boy is special. This boy is different. The aria climbed toward its dramatic middle section, a part notoriously difficult even for adult opera performers. The music demanded power, control, and emotional intensity all at once. It was the kind of passage that separated decent singers from truly remarkable ones. Raphael tightened his grip on the microphone. His brows furrowed with determination, he inhaled deeply, and launched into the higher notes with astonishing strength. The sound exploded outward like a burst of lightning, Audience members jumped to their feet again, unable to contain their excitement. A roar filled the theater, but Raphael didn't let it shake him. He stood tall, delivering every note with astonishing maturity. His voice climbed, and climbed, and climbed. The spotlight followed him, illuminating his tiny frame against the darkened stage. He looked like a small figure wrapped in a giant sphere of golden sound. Camera operators zoomed in on Simon again, and this time the disbelief was gone. Simon was smiling, not just a polite judge's smile, a real smile, a "this kid is going to change everything" kind of smile. As Raphael reached the emotional core of the aria, he lifted one hand upward, almost instinctively. The gesture wasn't rehearsed, it was pure passion. His voice vibrated with heartbreak, hope, longing, and strength all at once. The auditorium fell into a quiet, reverent hush. People weren't just listening now, they were feeling it. A young woman in the audience wiped tears from her eyes. A middle-aged man nodded slowly, overwhelmed. Someone whispered, "This is like an angel singing." Raphael moved with the rhythm, his body flowing with the music. He stepped forward, then back, then gently turned toward the crowd. His voice soared above the orchestra, blending perfectly yet somehow rising above everything. Even backstage, contestants waiting for their turn had stopped warming up. One girl put her hand over her mouth, stunned. A boy next to her whispered, "How can we follow this?" The aria built itself into one final push, a moment where everything narrowed down to the sound of his voice. Raphael took his time. He lifted his chin, closed his eyes, and gathered every ounce of emotion inside him. Then, he released the climactic high note. It shot through the theater like a beam of pure light. Long, powerful, perfectly pitched. A note so stunning that the audience erupted before he even finished holding it. People stood, people screamed, some cried. By the time Raphael lowered the microphone, breathless and overwhelmed, the entire auditorium was a sea of rising bodies and thunderous applause. His voice hadn't just filled the room, it had shaken it. The final note of Raphael's aria floated into silence like a feather, soft, gentle, and breathtakingly pure. For a heartbeat, the entire theater remained frozen in awe. It felt as if time itself paused to honor the sound that had just filled the room. Then, in one sweeping burst, the auditorium erupted. A thunderous standing ovation surged across the audience. People leapt to their feet, clapping wildly, cheering so loudly the stage vibrated under Raphael's small shoes. Some were crying, some were shouting his name, others simply stood with their hands on their hearts, blown away by what they had just witnessed. Raphael blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. He had never seen so many people cheering for him, never heard applause this loud. His chest tightened with emotion, and for a moment he felt the urge to cry but held it back. His dream was no longer just a dream. It was real. The judges were on their feet too. All four of them. Heidi Klum. She clapped with bright, sparkling eyes, her face glowing with pure admiration. She mouthed the words, "Amazing!" while giving him a little heart gesture with her hands. Sofia Vergara. Sofia was visibly emotional. She had tears in her eyes and brushed them away with a tissue she borrowed from a crew member. "Incredible," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "Howie Mandel." Howie was cheering loudly, arms raised high like a proud uncle at a school performance. His voice boomed through the room. "Yes, that's how you do IT. Simon Cowell." Simon, however, wasn't clapping right away. He was staring at the boy with a look Raphael couldn't quite decipher. Simon's expression was serious, intense even, but there was no coldness in it. Instead, there was something deeper, awe. Raphael's heart raced. Was he good enough? Did Simon like him? Was this all a dream? As the applause continued, Simon finally stood up slowly, very slowly, and that alone made the entire theater go quiet. People held their breath, waiting for what he would say. Raphael looked at Simon nervously, gripping the microphone with both hands. His pulse hammered in his ears. Simon placed both hands on the judge's desk and leaned forward. "Raphael," he began, his voice steady and strong, "I'm going to be completely honest with you." The room fell silent, so quiet that the stage lights humming above could almost be heard. "When you walked out," Simon continued, "I didn't know what to expect. You're tiny, you're 10, you looked nervous. An opera." He paused, letting the words sink in. Opera is one of the hardest things in the world to sing. Raphael swallowed, his throat tight. But the voice that just came out of you, Simon pointed directly at the boy, was not the voice of a 10-year-old. It was the voice of a superstar. The audience burst into applause again, but Simon raised a hand gently, signaling for them to quiet down. He wasn't finished. You didn't just sing, Simon said. You moved every single person in this room. Every note you hit, every breath you took, you made us feel something, and that, he tapped his chest twice, is what a real artist does. Raphael felt his knees weaken. He had never heard anything more powerful in his life. Simon exhaled, then added, I think the world is about to fall in love with you. The entire audience roared. But then, without warning, Simon stepped back from the microphone and began walking toward the center of the judges' table. The moment he started moving, people screamed. They knew what was coming. Raphael's eyes widened, his heart slammed against his ribs. No, he whispered under his breath, barely able to believe it. Simon reached the center, paused for one dramatic second, looked directly at Raphael, and slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. The sound echoed like a thunderclap. The button lit up instantly, and then, boom, gold confetti shot from the ceiling in glittering explosions. Thousands of golden pieces rained down like a shimmering waterfall, swirling around Raphael, sparkling in the stage lights. The music soared triumphantly. The crowd screamed louder than ever before. Even the hosts backstage ran out, cheering and pumping their fists. Raphael gasped. He pressed both hands to his mouth, and then the tears came, big, uncontrollable tears of joy. He fell to his knees as the confetti fell all around him, covering his hair, his shoulders, even the microphone still clenched in his hand. Hi! Smother burst through the backstage entrance and sprinted toward him, tears streaming down her own face. She wrapped her arms around him as he sobbed into her shoulder. You did it, Anak, she whispered emotionally. You did it. Simon walked onto the stage now, smiling gently. He approached Raphael as the boy stood shakily, wiping his eyes. Simon placed a hand on his shoulder. You deserve this, he said softly. Remember this moment for the rest of your life, because this is only the beginning. Raphael nodded, crying too hard to speak. The camera zoomed out, capturing the iconic image, a 10-year-old Filipino opera singer standing in a rain of gold, holding onto his mother, with Simon Cowell beside him, smiling proudly. The audience applauded long after the buzzer music faded, refusing to sit down, refusing to stop cheering. They had witnessed something magical, something unforgettable. And as the last pieces of confetti floated down, Raphael looked up at the shining lights above him. He whispered through his tears, "Thank you. This was the moment his whole life would change."